Welcome back to another episode of the KarterKast. I'm your host, Karter Baughan. With me, Dylan, Ben, no Connor. Connor's putting in PTO already. Football season just starts. You know, he's like, I don't need to be here on all the giraffes. You know, NBA season ran long. You know, I'm just putting in PTO. He can't even get through all 4 previews. This guy.
Rumor is he's working on another podcast, another college football podcast.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm hearing. I don't want to, transfer portal editions.
The KarterKast subreddit is talking about Trouble in Paradise. So, you know, they're talking.
It's tough when you have a 5-star recruit like that just leaving the program and going to, whatever's next in store. So, Connor, if you're watching, we'd love to have you back.
But
can we offer you 10%? Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we have to put our foot in the ground very soon.
I think we need to negotiate. Maybe he can have a cut of the SeatGeek earnings. I think that's the only way we get him back.
We'll talk about. Yeah, that's off-air stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, speaking of SeatGeek, download the SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com. Use code KarterKast. $20 off your first purchase. $50 minimum purchase required. Use code KarterKast at SeatGeek or download the SeatGeek app, SeatGeek.com, whatever it may be. Use code KarterKast. College football season's coming around the corner. A lot of places use SeatGeek as their official ticket reseller or provider. You're going to need the SeatGeek app anyways. Might as well go ahead and download it now. Use code KarterKast. $20 off your first purchase. Let's do it. SEC preview.
Can I say something real quick about SeatGeek?
Yeah.
Of course.
I can't believe I forgot.
Use SeatGeek code KarterKast to get tickets to the Cookout 400 this past weekend in Kentucky, NASCAR race. Big crash at the end. Joey Logano's mad. Some other guy I don't know the name of is mad because this inferior racer crashed his way to first place. But I got tickets right there, right at the
You're at the
right
pit.
at the turn.
Yeah.
Right at the left turn. At the Cookout 400. Game. SeatGeek, SeatGeek, code KarterKast.
Is that why Joey Logano was mad, or was he mad that the price of a cookout tray, the cookout tray has increased due to inflation? Was he more mad about that?
I could not tell. He seemed upset about something. Ben, that's something we need to talk about.
Okay.
I was just at Cookout. It's not good.
Yeah, let's make sure that's question number 1 of the September 4th debate. So, hey, address the cookout tray getting inflated.
Ben, how much was a cookout tray 4 years ago?
$5?
Remember that.
Right?
Remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess that, speaking of that, SEC football.
Yeah, exactly. What a segue. What a segue.
SEC football. That's why you clicked on this episode. That's why you're listening right now. Let's preview some SEC football right now. This is our last conference preview. If you haven't listened to ACC, Big 10, Big 12, go listen. Phenomenal episodes. They're fantastic. We got NFL previews coming up. We got more college football on the way. We're going to be here all season long. Can't wait. Let's do the SEC right now. Conference outlook. You look at the conference right now. We were talking before the show. It really feels like in a lot of these conferences, this is just how, these conferences work and sports works. You have these, 3 or 4 teams at the top. Big 10, it was 2 clear ones, I think. I really think there's 4 legitimate contenders in this conference, in my opinion. I think 5 total teams could win. I don't think they will. I think there's really that list of 2, 3 maybe, but I think there's 5 actual contenders in this conference. I think top to bottom, this is the best conference in college football this season. I don't think there's much debate about that.
Really?
Yeah, I think it is, especially that middle. Even you look at a team like South Carolina, you're like, this team would probably be looking at 7.5, 8.5 wins in these other conferences.
I was going through this conference. That was not the vibe I got. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
So it's not the vibe I got because you look at these schedules, you go through it, and you're like, man, that's a hard schedule. That's a hard schedule. That's a hard schedule. And you're like, oh, wait, because everyone's good in this conference. Everyone's good. So I'm very excited about that. Anything you guys want to touch on, the SEC as a whole, Dylan?
Maybe this is just the overarching theme of conference realignment, but it really feels like all of these conferences have 2 or 3 at the top, and then it's just, I think of the teams that were in the SEC previously, like the OG SEC teams, not teams that came in like Florida, South Carolina, Texas A&M, they all just kind of get lost in the mix. Like it's not even in the previous structure when you had 10 teams or 12 teams or whatever, you could kind of slot them into certain places, but now it just feels like a jumbled mess. And I think it's across the board, but I specifically saw it when I was looking at the SEC. So it'll be interesting because I agree, 5 teams realistically that have a shot at winning this conference, probably 2 or 3 who has like actual legitimate chances. I'm very interested to dive into this one because I think there's room for discourse.
Ben, anything on the SEC as a whole?
I was going to say, I agree with what Dylan was saying with the jumbled mess, but I think like for me, I could at least find it in tiers where I'm like, okay, like this is like, I don't know where this is going to go, but like from 5 or 6 to like 10 is like a group that seems similar to me. 1 to 5 or 1 to 4 probably. Like there's 4 teams that stand out to me. Really 3, I think, that I really like. But yeah, like I think I had some clarity
6
in this one.
Some might say 16.
Yeah, I could see it. Like there's a bunch of teams that where you're like, if things break their way or like this quarterback's good and really hits, like they can be at the top. But
yeah, exactly. But let's stop beating around the bush. Let's start talking about some football teams. Let's start off with the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia loses in the SEC title game last year, misses the playoff. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are almost the best bet in sports these last few years. Back-to-back national titles. They would have easily made the playoff in this structure. Last year, they were essentially the first team out with Florida State. This team's good. They lose Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers, and some other guys on the defensive side of the ball. But like we've mentioned with teams like Utah, NC State, where even Michigan, for that matter, year after year, you just trust them to have good defense, good defenders, good players. They're just going to slot in top-notch dudes, especially at Georgia. You know, you look at the 24/7 sports rankings, shout out Adam Stanko, they're number 2 in almost everything. They've got guys all across the board that have just been waiting to play, redshirting, just getting lifted in the gym. I don't think there's any drop-off with Georgia. My only thing that I will say about Georgia going into this year from last year is I like Carson Beck. I think he's an awesome quarterback. He's going to be in the Heisman race and everything. But last season, Georgia had a somewhat of an easier schedule than people realize. They weren't playing as hard of a schedule as they are this year. This year, it's a harder schedule, but I don't think that matters as much since it's a 12-team playoff. Georgia can lose 2 games, maybe even 3 games, and still probably get into the playoff. So with Georgia getting into the playoff discussion, I don't think there's any question that they're going to get in. It's a matter of, okay, can they run the table 11-1, win the SEC? I think that is a question to be asked.
Can I start with a question?
Yes.
A question that we all know that Georgia's a very good team, has been a very good team. Do the Georgia Bulldogs, whether you want to say last year or this year, just in this relative time frame, do the Georgia Bulldogs have an explosive offense?
No.
Explosive.
I'm going to say it's the most explosive that they've had in the last few years.
Okay.
Because I think this is the best quarterback play they're going to have in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I just think the weapons that Stetson Bennett had were just so elite. I mean, everywhere across the board, it's NFL guy, NFL guy, NFL guy. But I think this team, like with Carson Beck raises your floor and raises your ceiling as well. And when you don't have as much talented weapons around him.
They were they were just steady and better than everyone else. But like, I'm not sure like if you call it explosive, right? I think this team has more, it's like a lot of throws to Ladd McConkey, a lot of throws to Brock Bowers, running the ball a lot. Like it wasn't like explosive, but like I think like from an aerial, when I think explosive, I think like aerial attack, and I think they're going to have more of that this year than they have in years past.
And going real quick, go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, when I think of Georgia, and this is, not being a homer, not being, a typical Michigan fan, I really do think of them, at least in years past, as a better Michigan-style offense, right?
Yeah.
Run first, Georgia doesn't really ground and pound, but they're not going to throw it over top of you. They're not going to go for 500 passing yards a game. But this year, I think I agree with you, Ben. This might be the most explosive that they're going to be. Obviously, Trevor Etienne, I always mess it up, coming in from Florida.
Etienne, potato.
Yeah, a little French in there or something. Great PFF ratings, 9 touchdowns, over 6 yards per attempt from scrimmage last year. He is going to be such an addition for Georgia. I think that matters a lot. We touched on Beck. I think last year a lot of people kind of counted him out. And kind of the same way we talked about Stetson Bennett, is you could just plug a guy in here and, it's Georgia. It works. You don't need someone to go for 300 passing yards a game. We've seen Carson Beck now, and we know what to expect. And he's one of those top-tier guys we talked about, potential Heisman winner. Plenty of offensive transfers. I want to touch on the defensive point. I think Georgia's going to be a great team. I don't want the quote card out there with Georgia's going to go 7-5 or whatever. The defense for me might have taken a step back. 80th in returning production, and their transfer portal haul, when I was looking at it, it wasn't anything that was like my eyes got real big and I was like, whoa. It was just a normal transfer portal haul. That's the only concern I have, is it might not be a normal Georgia-esque defense, but the offense is there. Have we seen Benjamin Urasek? I sent a picture in a group chat.
I'll put it on the YouTube video, or if you're watching on Spotify.
This guy's going to be a star. Ben, imagine Rodrigo Blankenship. The goggles, everything, except he's white. It's Stanford transfer tight end, highly rated, had a decent year at Stanford. Guy's going to be a star. I cannot wait to see him superimposed on this discussion.
Why do you like him so much?
The glasses. He literally has taped glasses like Squints from Sandlot. That's what he's a bigger Squints from Sandlot.
I guess like, right, because Georgia in a sense has started kind of like a mini, like, I don't want to compare them to Nick Saban and Alabama, but it's kind of like they've taken on that like role, whether that's fair or not. And I guess, could this Georgia team kind of undergo like the same sort of transformation? Remember, like, Nick Saban teams, like when we were growing up, we were in like middle school, right? There was like, just Bama was hard-nosed defense, like first round running backs. Like, are we going to get to a point here, kind of like how Nick Saban did, where he kind of evolved into more like of a passing attack with like, especially Tua?
Yeah. Like,
do you think Georgia kind of undergoes a similar transformation where they're less like, because I wouldn't say they're ground and pound. They're just not cute with it. They're just like, we're just going to do what works, stop it. Like, I think Georgia might become more of a like less of a ground and pound ish team and more, I don't want to say finesse because there's a little like negative connotation to that, but a little more of like athleticism, speed, rather than just like the pure raw strength.
And I to your point, I agree with that, because with Stetson Bennett, there were limitations. It felt like he made the big plays when it mattered. So I'm not discrediting him by any means, but I think they've always been going after those big time quarterbacks, but then it's just like, okay, we trust a guy like Stetson Bennett, so Justin Fields, we don't need you, or Dylan Raiola, we don't need you. These backup quarterbacks that come in, they just don't need them because this guy, they have the guy they want. And ironically, with Stetson Bennett, they're like, we just have a good running game. We don't need to throw the ball. We can just run it down their throats every time. But I agree, if the Bama one, it was just for so long it was, okay, very average quarterback, but elite everywhere else on the freaking field. First round NFL running back, like you mentioned. And then it kind of just shifted out of nowhere. Like when you watch Tua play in an Alabama jersey that first time, you're like, whoa,
this is different.
This looks weird. A guy who can actually throw the ball in an Alabama jersey playing quarterback. This is weird. This
left-handed.
Left-handed. That might have just been.
That's weird.
Maybe that was just it the whole time. Going back to Georgia last year, I mentioned their schedule. So going through it real quick, they barely beat Auburn on the road. They had it wasn't a close game, but it was a tough game against Missouri, who's a good team. Then Ole Miss, they spanked, but Ole Miss can never beat the Georgias and Alabamas. We know that. And then at Tennessee, and Tennessee wasn't a very good team last year. It was a very down year for Tennessee. That was those were like by far and away their hardest games, and they struggled in some of those. And then when they actually had to, kind of nut up and say, hey, you got to play against Alabama now, they lose. that kind of scares me a little bit going into this season when they have to play teams like Clemson at not really a neutral site. It's in Atlanta, but at Bama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. Then they got to play a better Tennessee team this year. Now, with I'm saying that right now, and you're like, oh, well, that is a harder schedule. 10-2 Georgia, that's fine. That's not the end of the world. You're going to the playoff. You're probably going to the SEC title game at 10-2 in this conference.
I want to touch on the Alabama comment about last year real quick. Didn't they lose by 3?
They did lose by 3. It was a close game, don't get me wrong, but when it was finally time to play that hard team, to play that real title contending team, when it's finally time for Ohio State to play Michigan, Ohio State crumbles. So you can make
now you're speaking my language.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're speaking my language now.
With you, I have to say Ohio State sucks, Michigan stuff, and then when I transition to Ben, I'm like, okay, by the way, so it's like if Tony Bennett started, running fast-paced offense. You're like, oh. It's the Vince McMahon meme.
Yeah.
I think I hear I'm looking at the schedule, and it's
tough.
Let me see here. It's not easy. We might get to this later. Having to go to Gainesville and play in the swamp, even though this Florida team's going to have a down year, that's not easy. It's not easy.
Whoa, time out. I think it's a neutral site. I think it's in Jacksonville.
It's Jacksonville, right?
Yep. I think it's at the Jacksonville.
It's always
Stadium.
Jacksonville. Yeah.
I take it back. This is a really bad moment for those guys telling me that I don't watch the games. This is a bad moment. I might be exposed here.
Anything on Georgia before we move on?
No, I'm good.
I think
it's kind of enough said.
Enough said. All right, Texas, the Longhorns. First year in the SEC, year one for Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers in the SEC. I'm very excited to see Texas this year play SEC football. Can they make that jump from Big 12 to SEC where they weren't necessarily dominant last year in the Big 12? Yes, Quinn Ewers wasn't healthy all season. That's still a concern. They lose their running backs this year, but they're very talented across the board. Can Texas be successful in year one of the SEC, Dylan?
Yes, I think they can be successful. They have the pedigree to do so. This is just I do feel obligated every year to let Ohio State fans know that Quinn Ewers could be your starting quarterback if you did not run him out of town. And we wouldn't even have to have this discussion about Will Howard that we had last week.
Kyle
but
McCord.
Anyway. Or Kyle, you got Aaron Nolan. You got guys like Aaron Nolan and Lincoln Kineholes waiting in the 3rd and 4th string spots. You could have Quinn Ewers starting. Besides the point, I do think Texas is ready. They did really well in the transfer portal. Essentially got 3 new starting wide receivers out of the portal. And then Quinn Ewers, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, over 8 yards per attempt in his career at Texas. I don't really know what else there is to say about this Texas team. You could maybe question the jump from the Big 12 to the SEC, that just facing the defenses that you're going to be facing. But I have no reason to believe that this team won't be ready for it. Texas is one of those top teams. I'm assuming when we were talking about teams that could win the conference, this is probably one of them.
Absolutely.
I think Texas is
I agree. I think I would add, I think obviously Quinn Ewers is going to be fantastic. I really like the offensive line. I really like the playmakers. I think the questions I have are specifically at running back with what's his face getting injured, CJ Baxter. Yeah, because that felt like the guy to take over.
The backup got hurt yesterday.
Yeah, so they're having some issues there, along with it is a lot to replace Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat in the interior of the defensive line. With that all being said, it's next 4-star up. It's next 5-star up.
Kind of the same thing as Georgia.
They're kind of right? Alabama, Georgia knocks them off. Texas is kind of the next. I don't want to say that but can't you kind of see the pattern of they're kind of trending in that direction a little bit?
We'll find out how good Arch Manning is.
Yeah, I don't love the in-game coaching that we've seen from Sarkisian at times. He crapped down his leg against Oklahoma last year.
And
that's concerning. But I do love this team as well.
He crapped down his leg against Washington as well in the playoffs.
He did.
With that Washington team last year, what boggled my mind about them, Penix was amazing. Those receivers were amazing. The passing attack was unbelievable. That defense was so bad, and that's why I trusted Michigan so much. Once it became clear it was going to be Michigan versus Washington in the college football title game last year, I knew Jim Harbaugh, he's not stupid. He's like, I'm not going to play undisciplined football. Run it down their throat. They can't stop Blake Corum. Run a couple play actions when they least expect it, and have J.J. McCarthy make easy throws. Texas had the rush attack. They had everything there to just dominate the run game, dominate time of possession. They tried to get too cute, and that's what worries me about Texas at times as this national title contender, where I don't think I can just sit there and feel good about saying Texas is going to win the national title this year, because Sarkisian has this tendency to try and get too cute at the wrong times. Like you mentioned, Oklahoma was a great example of that too. Washington was a prime example in the college football playoff, and they still almost had a chance to win it at the very end there. They had no business winning that game. But with all that being said, talking about this year's Texas, you mentioned the losses on the interior defensive line. Like I said, I think, like you said, another person comes in. I think they fill that. Running back is a big question mark. Isaiah Bond is a sneaky transfer guy coming in there that he's just going to fill in great, and I think he's going to be way more successful there than he was at Bama, because Quinn Ewers, he's a phenomenal quarterback. I worry about him staying healthy because it always feels like he has a nagging injury going on, but he's a dang good quarterback, man. He's really, really freaking good. And he can, if you're doing quarterback rankings, like, he's a top 3 quarterback in the country. I don't think that's even a debate.
Top 3?
Top 3?
Top 3 in the country?
We doing this? We can do this right now.
Dylan Gabriel.
No, I think
Carson Beck.
I'd take Quinn Ewers over Dylan Gabriel.
Really?
Yes.
Jackson Dart.
I would take.
I like them both a lot.
I would take Dart over Gabriel, to be honest.
We might have to get that on a graphic. We might have to get top 3 quarterbacks in the nation on a graphic.
We might have to do that.
I don't know if I'd put Quinn Ewers up there, just off the top of my head. I would have to think about it, but
see the numbers.
Yeah, of course. Hours spent on scouring PFF's homepage.
Here's kind of where I think there's some disconnect. Dylan, he is totally one of those guys like Quinn Ewers. You know when like an NBA discourse, Carter, where it's just like, ooh, that boy nice. Yeah. Like Quinn Ewers passes that boy nice. Like he is hurt or isn't all that good, and then he connects on like a 40-yard deep ball to Xavier Worthy, and you're like,
it's beautiful.
Ooh, that was perfect. Like I remember, like I fell in love with him against Alabama 2 years ago when they almost won that game in Austin. Like I was just so impressed before he got hurt.
Shout out Bryce Young for saving the day.
Yes, and Jameer Gibbs.
Bryce Young.
Yeah, and so like. I just think he's one of those guys where you see it in flashes, and you saw it even more last year. I think there's like, you just see the flashes and you just expect him to put it all together this year. At least that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I think you might be, I'm being stupid here. Ben, I think you might be swayed a little bit by the mullet. Is there any possibility that you might be
a Morgan Wallen fan?
Subconsciously affected by the mullet?
We might need to look into that.
I had some
effects of the mullet.
Ben, do you need some help? Thank you, Post Malone and Morgan Wallen. That song, it just comes on nonstop. It's out of control. Anything else on Texas, really? Look, they're a good team. They're going to compete. There's really not much to it. I think running back is that big question mark with injuries coming in. Looking through their schedule, they do play some really fun games this year. Really fun games. At Ann Arbor is a
week 2.
That's awesome.
Texas at Ann Arbor against Michigan. I love a lot of these games, like Clemson, Georgia. Clemson, Georgia is going to tell us a lot about those teams week 1. Then it's going to be, Texas A&M, Notre Dame. That's going to tell us a lot about those teams right away. Texas, Michigan is going to tell us a lot about Michigan, who's going to be playing quarterback for the Wolverines, and how good is Texas actually. Can they win on the road against an elite defense like Michigan, which I assume they're going to have a good defense.
It will say a lot about Michigan if they win the game. If they lose, then I think we got to give it some time. We got to give it, maybe till week 5 or 6 to see what Michigan has. But if they win, it'll say a lot about
in
it.
that game. I could very much feel like where we're doing this gimmicky 2-quarterback system with Michigan. We're like, first quarter orgy, second quarter Tuttle, orgy
back to orgy.
Play. Yeah.
Yep.
Orgy in, orgy out. Orgy in, orgy out.
Yep.
Exactly.
In and out. Flip. Snip, snap.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think even an 8-4 Michigan team, like if they're 8-4, 9-3, like we talked about it being a possibility in the Big Ten show, like that's still a massive win for Texas.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It's the it's the defending national champions in their place early in the season. Even if it's an 8 or 9 win team, that's still a fantastic win.
And then talking about Texas's schedule real quick, Red River rivalry. Can't believe I said that right. Texas, Oklahoma. Then they got to play Georgia in Austin, which is good. Someone's getting married that day, which is wild.
Yeah, that was
wild.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Ben?
I'm gonna get canceled on.
Yeah, you might get canceled.
Yeah.
Cancel fall weddings.
No, dude,
what is this?
it was a tough day on Twitter for me. If you saw the discourse.
Yeah, today was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. I was getting a lot of strays. We have audio recording approving.
Not approving.
No
bull crap approving.
No, it was approving. Approving football being on in between the ceremony in the reception with no volume as long as it's in the corner. We agreed on those terms. So, yeah.
Do you know about my wedding story?
Let's do this. Let's.
You just want to do it?
It's a wedding podcast. TLC, let's do this.
Abby and I set our date about a year and a half out, maybe a year out from when we actually got married, New Year's Eve 22. And Michigan was bad at this point. This was, I had no idea they were going to be playing in the college football playoff. You know the story. Michigan ends up getting TCU. Ohio State ends up getting Georgia. I'm not saying this is the best thing that Abby has ever done for the relationship, but this is like all-time cool future wife moment. She was like, why don't we just use a TV and put the Ohio State game on at the back of our reception? Volume and everything. So they were literally, no one minded this. Table full of people just watching the Ohio State game as everybody was dancing. Coolest thing ever. And the missed kick right when the ball dropped.
Yeah.
Icing on the cake. Icing on the cake.
I was with my Ohio State fan friend. He dropped to his knees.
Get him out. You have an Ohio State fan friend?
I do.
I
have a couple. I'm sorry.
Can't do it. Can't trust them. You don't tell them secrets, do you?
No.
Okay. All right. Just making sure.
Share passwords. Last thing on Texas. I can't wait for last game of the season at A&M. That's going to be phenomenal. Rivalry week this year is at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. The A&M Texas game, I can't wait for that one. Hopefully everybody's healthy and we get full power. A&M's good, Texas is good. I hope that's a great game. But let's move on. We talked about that way too long. Alabama, I don't have as much on these other teams, so we can keep things moving along here. Alabama, Saban era is over. We're getting a lot of Saban on television now. Look, some are saying too much Saban on television. I don't know, but that's what they're saying out there in the streets. But Saban on TV now, he's out. DeBoer in. Jalen Milroe comes back. They lose a lot of production at Alabama this season. They bring in a lot of dudes from Washington and other places and big-time recruits. It's Alabama. Their win total, I believe last time I checked, was 9.5 still. Dylan, where are you feeling? Where's your mindset on this Alabama team in the non-Nick Saban era?
So I like to give a lot of reminders on this show. Quinn Ewers could be the quarterback at Ohio State. Also reminder that Kalen DeBoer played one Big Ten game and said, I got to get out of here. I got to go to the SEC because I can't play against Big Ten teams for my entire career. Thank you, Michigan. It's going to be interesting to see what Alabama does. It's literally post-Nick Saban era. How are they going to approach this? I personally think that Jalen Milroe got a bad rap last year. I think he's a very exciting quarterback. I think there's a very high ceiling. He, I believe, was the top last year in big-time throw rate. So, when it means the most, he's taking the risks, and sometimes that doesn't work out. Sometimes it does. 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 10 yards per attempt, 12 rush touchdowns. Obviously, the value that he brings on the ground is unprecedented. But you said stuff about the transfer portal. I did not see anything in terms of transfers they got that I was like, wow, this is going to make a significant difference. And I think that's where we have the question that we're going to need to answer is, what does the post-Nick Saban era at Alabama look like? And for that reason, I don't really know if I'm high or low on this team. I think Jalen Milroe will have a great year, but what do we expect from the team as a whole? And I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either, but back to the Milroe point where you think you got a bad deal or whatnot last season, I think you're right. You watched that Michigan game last year. Well, look, Michigan's defense was unworldly. Phenomenal. That Alabama O-line was getting decimated every single play, and not a great offensive line for that matter anyways. That was their biggest hole last year. There's still question marks about that offensive line this year too. But about that, when you watch that Michigan game, Milroe was making plays left and right. He was making something out of nothing quite often. And as a Michigan fan and as someone who had money on Michigan in that game, a lot of money on Michigan in that game, you were scared every time he had that ball, and especially when he scrambled out of the pocket. You're like, crap, man, he's gonna make a play here. He's a good quarterback. But what were you gonna say, Dylan?
That center, McLaughlin, I can't remember where he transferred to. But he was awful. Like, you can't blame
taken out of town so fast.
Oh yeah, you can't blame Milroe for any of that
in
the Rose Bowl.
Alabama.
Absolutely not. And shout out Brooke, Roll Tide, Roll Brooke.
Roll Tide, Roll Brooke, whatever her name is.
I also need to point out we retired Nick Saban as well before we move on from Alabama. I need to give Ben his opportunity, but we did retire Nick Saban. He saw the defense. He said, I'm done.
Ben, thoughts on Alabama?
I'm with you guys in sort of not knowing what to expect. I do kind of I don't really love sort of some of their deficiencies in playing in a conference like the SEC. Just the wideouts don't really do it for me. Among the candidates to be their top wide receiver is someone who was at Washington last year and wasn't one of their top 2 or 3 guys. So that gives me pause. I think they'll have a decent defensive line, or a good defensive line, but sort of the back 7, they lose a lot of production there. They have to bring in transfers. I also just think I think Kalen DeBoer is a fantastic coach. I think Alabama's a fantastic program. I'm not sure if the marriage is great. And I think that Alabama fans are going to have to show a little patience when it comes to getting back to winning national titles. And you guys obviously see the irony in that statement. That won't happen. Yes. So I think I think Vegas has got it right. I'm thinking 9-8-4, 9-3, and they're going to hate that. They're going to hate that. But I think Milroe's going to put up numbers. He's going to put up numbers. Offensive line's good. Running backs are good. Wide receivers and back 7 of the defense I don't love.
That's what I wanted to ask, though, is you're in this Nick Saban era where, holy crap, we lose 2 games? That's a horrible season. What has happened to Nick Saban? Has he lost it? Is he senile? What happens this season if Alabama loses 3 or 4 games? Are they already trying to get DeBoer out of town? I think it's easy to say in August right now that, it's okay if we have a little bit of a down year. We go 9-3, 8-4. It takes a year to rebuild. I think it's easy to say that in August, but then when it comes down to you lose against one of your arch rivals in the SEC, you're not going to be able to handle that emotionally as a fan.
Mm-mm.
I think we're also assuming that Alabama fans are rational thinkers. And they just, when you are pampered with a program like Alabama, the expectation is just different. No one in Alabama is going to be happy if they don't make the playoff. That's just as simple as that. There are no Alabama fans out there that will be okay with that. No one's going to give Kalen DeBoer time. And can you blame them?
No, why?
I don't think so. You've been used to it your whole life. People our age, you've been used to it your whole life.
It's a Boston sports fan right now. All of a sudden you're watching the Patriots. You're like, Why would I watch football on Sundays if we're only going to win 6 games this year? I'm used to 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Super Bowls. We're relevant every year. Now you're not. But down there, it's all that matters is Alabama football.
Roll Tide. Yeah. Shout out Brooke.
Anyhow, let's move on. Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they are the hype train. It is flying through Mississippi right now. Ole Miss, their win total's at 9.5. It's minus 110 on each side last time I checked. They've got a nice schedule going into the SEC. It's not look, SEC football never easy. If there ever was an easy schedule, it would be Ole Miss's schedule. They have a very nice non-conference schedule that's not going to be challenging whatsoever. They have one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country. They do lose Judkins to Ohio State. Lane Kiffin is one of the best offensive minds we have in football right now. Are you buying into the Ole Miss hype, Ben?
I absolutely am.
Wow.
I love the Lane Kiffin offense. I do think Lane Kiffin's one of those guys where it's like, okay, we're waiting for the breakthrough. I like the combination of bringing back returning production. Connor's furious right now.
Connor's punching air right now.
Yeah, but legitimate returning production. And then where they had deficiencies, that's where they went in the portal. Like, I think it's a good combo. I expect a step up on defense because I think the defensive talent has been elevated. I love Jackson Dart. They're returning 3 offensive linemen. They've got weapons, guys like Juice Wells coming in from South Carolina. Obviously, you'd love to have Quinshaw and Judkins, but you have transfers and returning a little bit of moderate returning production in the running back room as well. I just really like this team. I think this is the year where they're putting things together. I think they're certainly in the playoff, and I think it's a question of whether they're the second best team in the conference or third. I think them and Texas are like neck and neck. Bama below, Georgia above. That's where I'm at.
Dylan, are you buying the hype?
I'm neutral on the hype. I think Jackson Dart is an electric quarterback, very fun to watch, makes the big-time plays, very high average distance of target, ADOT. So, like, he's throwing down the field. He can also do it on his feet. So, he's very fun to watch. The concern, and I'm going to use concern lightly, that I have is with the defense. A lot of defensive transfers coming in that haven't logged snaps at the college football level. And that could be good. That could be bad. We just don't know what to expect of these guys. I think the offense, obviously you lose Keshawn Judkins to Ohio State. That's a problem, but they got plenty of halfback transfers. So they're going to have people to fill the role. It's just a matter of, are they going to be as dynamic? Probably not. But if you can fill that gap a little bit, then I think Ole Miss will be okay. I think it really comes down to the defense and these transfers that are coming in. If they get time, how are they going to look? And I think that's what it comes down to.
But I think the good part about that is their non-conference is a literal joke.
Yeah.
They have time to figure out, okay, who are we going to play? What are we going to play? Who's going to play X amount of snaps and whatnot. I'm going to read you the schedules. We're going to go through the entire Ole Miss schedule. I know this isn't great podcasting. I know it's not fun, but we're going to go through this entire schedule. You guys are going to tell me win or loss in these games.
This is when you throw in like the clip above us of someone playing Subway Surfers.
Yeah. We do like the ASMR. Yeah. Someone's playing like GTA and like flying through. Yeah, exactly. All right, here we go. Furman.
I don't know. No, I'm good. Win.
Yeah.
We're going. Yeah, win.
No, I've bad experiences with Furman.
Middle Tennessee.
We don't, Carter.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Win.
No,
we bet on that.
We bet on Furman.
All right.
Middle Tennessee, obvious win. At Wake Forest in Winston-Salem.
Easy win. Wake stinks.
Georgia Southern.
Win.
4-0 blind. 4-0, no problem. Home Kentucky.
Win.
At South Carolina.
Win.
That's 6-0 to start this season. At LSU.
Win.
I'm going win, but tough one.
That's the one. That's where you can say, okay, potential loss. Depending on how you see LSU. Oklahoma at home.
Win,
but I think
they split LSU Oklahoma, right?
I think there's a good shot, but like individually, I think they have over a 50% chance of winning
both those games individually.
But like together, I think they probably split there.
I think they split there. So let's be generous here. We got 6, so 7-1 right now. Arkansas on the road.
Win.
Yep.
Sam Pittman isn't there anymore at that point.
That might be an interim coach game though, so watch out.
Yeah.
Georgia at home.
I'm gonna go win.
I'll go loss.
Yeah, let's say loss, just for the exercise.
Okay.
At Florida.
Win.
I'm gonna go loss.
Home, Mississippi State, Egg Bowl.
Win.
I'm
going 10-2.
That's 10-2, no problem. That's 10-2, no problem.
And that could easily be 11-1.
Easily.
We were being nice, saying they'd lose 2 out of 3 to Oklahoma.
Their schedule lines up so beautifully with the crappy non-conference to get these transfers to gel together. They have an insane offense. Jackson Dart's a phenomenal quarterback, one of the best in the country, one of the best in this conference. Lane Kiffin, one of the best offensive minds in football. And then they only have to play one hard SEC road game, maybe 2 if you believe in Florida for some reason. The Swamps are always hard to play, and Florida's going to have no expectations by that point. So, all the pressure's on Ole Miss in that game. So I see your point there, Dylan. But at LSU's your hardest game, but then you get Oklahoma and Ole Miss. You get Georgia and Ole Miss. They don't have to play that classic, this is cute. Ole Miss is 7-0. They're the 4th-ranked team in the country on the 3:30 CBS kickoff. They got to go to Tuscaloosa right now, and they lose 59-2. That's not happening this year. They don't have to do that this year. This is a different Ole Miss team. And so, with that being said, I love Ole Miss. I'm all in on the hype. I'm all in on Ole Miss this season. All in.
Okay. All right. We'll see.
No.
When you say all in, are you talking like win the conference? Are we talking to get their 10 wins? So what are we talking here?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's why you stick around this episode. This is when we should just insert an ad right here. This is when we insert an ad right here. So anyhow,
SeatGeek code KarterKast.
Exactly, Dylan. All right, let's move on. Let's do underrated, overrated, and move into that part of the segment of the preview. We could have done LSU, Tennessee, but I think we'll get to them in certain parts of the show. So anyhow, let's start off. Who's your overrated team, Ben?
It's LSU.
It is LSU. That's mine too.
It's LSU because you're replacing 2 coordinators. You're trying to rebuild what was a bad defense, and you're trying to gel a new quarterback with a new offensive coordinator. I just think that's too many things you're trying to rebuild or fix all at once.
Yes.
That's all I'll say.
Look, and I think their defense is going to be fine. I don't have questions about their defense next season.
But the offense is dropping.
You lose a Heisman-winning quarterback, and you're losing 2 first-round NFL wide receivers.
Coordinator.
That's really, really hard to replace. And your win total's at 9.5 wins. And it's not like they have an Ole Miss-like schedule. Like, you got to play USC week 1. That's not an easy game. That you're still going to have a hard time in that game all the way in Las Vegas. This is a hard schedule for LSU. Nussmeier, he could be good. Like, there's a lot of unknowns there, but for them to automatically, Brian Kelly never wins less than 10 games of the season. Okay, but Dylan, we know this. Betting like that will kill you in the long run. Just because it's never happened before, all of a sudden it doesn't matter. That does not matter. This is a different team. LSU's my overrated pick. I think they're 1 or 2 wins off their win total.
I'm not a firm believer in LSU. I don't want this to be misconstrued. But obviously big question mark at quarterback. It's really Garrett Nussmeier's first chance to start there. But they go and get CJ Daniels from Liberty, who did pretty well. And then they get the wide receiver from Mississippi State, Xavion Thomas. Rated great there against SEC defenses. So they're replenishing some of the receiving core, returning everyone on their O-line except the center. And they didn't have a bad pass blocking unit. So maybe it's the coordinator piece that is getting you guys tripped up. But when I was going through looking at this LSU team, I wasn't like, oh, this team is going to be worse than what they're expected to be.
No, it's just there's so many moving parts that you have to hope either get fixed or maintain the same level. It's not like there's not any one place where I'm like, that's not going to work. It's just the fact that you're putting a lot of faith in a new defensive coordinator getting more out of the talent they have on defense, them having more defensive talent, them replacing the offensive coordinator, them replacing Jane Daniels, them replacing playmakers like Malik Neighbors. Like, there's just a lot. And it's not saying that they won't do some. It's just that, like, I feel like you're having to assume they can do most, if not all of those things well. And even for a good coach and a good coaching staff, that's really hard.
And also, let's say they return everyone from last year. Their schedule is brutal this year. It's brutal.
But their toughest games they get to play at home. Alabama and Ole Miss.
But still, I think Alabama and Ole Miss are better teams than them. But look, okay,
yeah, sure.
USC in Las Vegas. You got to play Ole Miss at home. That's nice. You got to go at Texas A&M. That's never an easy game.
Yeah,
then
that's
you
not
got to play Bama, and you got to play Oklahoma, and you got to go to the Swamp in Florida. And like we've mentioned multiple times, the Swamp in Florida, by that point, Billy Napier's probably already gone, and they're having an interim coach out there. I don't think this LSU team is not talented. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they can't be a good team. But their schedule lining up with how much production they're losing on the offensive side of the ball. And yeah, you can say they replenished in the transfer portal. I need to see it first. I think it's very hard for me to say, I really think LSU is going to go over 9.5 wins. It feels like a lot with that kind of schedule.
Lot.
That's fair. I could see it. I just wanted to push back a little there.
What's your team?
My overrated Alabama.
I don't hate it.
I think Alabama's a bit overrated. And this is purely, we talked about Jalen Milroe, exciting quarterback, takes chances, throws down the field, can get it done on the ground. It's the fact that we're entering the post-Nick Saban era. And, with a win total at 9.5, I understand that's not up to Alabama standards, but it's still, the question needs to be answered. What is Alabama going to look like moving forward? And I don't think they'll go 6-6, but 8 wins, like, that's a disappointment for Alabama this year. I think that's not crazy. So
missing the college football playoff is a disappointment for Alabama this season. Like, let's call it like we see it. Everybody in Tuscaloosa tomorrow would be freaking out in the streets down there if Alabama doesn't make the college football playoff. I think that's a fine pick. Connor texted us his picks. He has Alabama overrated as well.
Okay.
He has Alabama overrated as well. So there's Connor's, and then let's underrated. Who is your underrated team, Ben?
For underrated, I am going to go with Oklahoma.
Ooh, okay. Talk
the defense.
Me into this because I need help being talked into this.
Yeah. No, I like the defense. I think that Brent Venables is a great defensive coach. I think that translates. I think they're a team that's going to muck it up. Like, they're going to be a team that Ole Miss doesn't want to play. They're going to be a team that Texas doesn't want to play. I think they're going to be able to play kind of an underdog role. And I think, like, a fired up guy like Brent Venables can get his team riled up. I do have questions about Jackson Arnold. I don't think he is special. They're losing Jeff Lebby too. So there's questions there, but I think they can stumble into 8 or 9 wins, beating some teams you don't expect. Like, I think that is a place where Ole Miss can trip up. I think Texas can lose that game if Sark kind of, like, just goes into his shell again. So I kind of like Oklahoma here, just as a team that isn't going to be at the top of the conference, but they're going to be at the top of the next group, and a team that just all of those top teams don't want to play.
My question is, I understand Venables is a good defensive coordinator. He was great as a defensive coordinator at Clemson, but what has shown me that he can be a great coach in the SEC? I know it is tough when you're like, oh, well, he only had 1 year sample size in the Big 12 last year with Oklahoma and whatnot. I just don't know if I'm ready to sit there and say, you know what, Brett Venables is the guy at Oklahoma, because there's a world he's not there after next season. That's a real possibility. If they realize, holy crap, SEC ball, that's tough. They struggled in the Big 12 last year. I don't know why I'm supposed to all of a sudden believe they're going to make this jump into the SEC when they got to play Bama, at Mizzou, at LSU, at Ole Miss. They got to play and always they got to play Texas. Those are some tough games.
No, it's not going to be easy, but I just kind of have I was looking there's a degree where I'm like, okay, LSU, right? Like just too much production losing. There's a degree of a vibe thing with Oklahoma where I'm like, okay, I can just kind of see them.
We can't argue that, Dylan.
It's just, and I don't want to pull out that line too. You can't overuse that, right? But I do think they have talent, a lot of talent that can compete in the SEC. But yeah, the defense I expect to make a big jump, especially in year 3. I think there are definitely questions on offense. I think Jackson Arnold will be fine. And I especially like the back 7 of Oklahoma too. That's where there's a big concern with Alabama. Danny Stutzman was really good for them last year. He's also just kind of a meme. Like he's a guy who's going to get Twitter famous for saying like some football guy type thing. Like, I don't know. I just think they're a team that could be kind of fun to root for if you're not a Texas fan or a fan of teams in the SEC. I think people will kind of be able to maybe rally behind Oklahoma a little bit when they're playing the big dogs of the SEC. So I just kind of going with Oklahoma. There's a few different options here. LSU felt like the overrated. There's a few options, and I didn't know what I was going to say until I said it, and I just went Oklahoma. That was one of my 3.
Yeah,
so.
I don't feel great about this, and I might get clowned for this one. But I was looking through it. I was going through last year's stuff, and is Auburn underrated?
No, they're not. No.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Talk me out of it then.
My first note for Auburn when I was doing it is Peyton Thorne. All caps, exclamation
Peyton
point.
Thorne too.
MSU, boy, is he bad. That's my first line.
Okay, that's just because you don't like that he played at Michigan State. But just hear me out here. Like, they were pretty competitive against the best teams last year. Hugh Freeze kind of had these guys going. They lose on a last-second miracle from Jalen Milroe against Alabama. If that doesn't happen, they're a 7-5 football team. They did not beat LSU. I had that one wrong. But they almost beat Georgia last year. They didn't impress me. Maybe not underrated. 7.5 is a lot of wins in the SEC. I struggled with this. I don't know where to go here, guys. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I had Auburn written down just because they were feisty in a lot of games last year against good teams, but I don't know. Dylan, talk me into someone.
Also, Hugh Freeze, noted bad guy, so don't want to publicly support him, but he did some iffy things at Liberty. Anyway.
More so at Ole Miss, but...
Yeah, that's true.
I love that he didn't do the Ole Miss part first. That's not the first thing he said.
He's just like, yeah, he voted for Trump at Ole Miss, but hiring strippers and stuff at Ole Miss, like that's chill.
Certified bad guy, Hugh Freeze.
I just think of him laying in the bed, the hospital bed, like.
And then, yeah, ironically enough, Falwell wants to go hire him at Liberty, one of the most.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay. Talk me into an underrated team here, Dylan.
I'm going to go Florida. And I know it's not sexy. It's not flashy. But think about it. It's tough to go to the Swamp and play. We're looking at their schedule. I got to find them here. LSU and Ole Miss, both at the end of the year, back-to-back in the Swamp. That is upset potential there for one of those games. You have Graham Mertz, as sexy.
I was about to say that you're not getting me out of bed with Graham Mertz.
I'm not trying to, right? But he's like you ever need to go to bed at night, maybe you're a little hyped up, you want a nice solid sleep, right? You don't need to be jacked up or anything. Graham Mertz is like your cup of sleepy time tea. You steep it for 4 or 5 minutes in the boiling water and it just kind of rocks you to sleep, right? Gently,
send
you
him
sleep
back
the
to
whole night.
Why is he not throwing passes for Iowa this season is what I'm asking.
That's a fair question, right? but he takes care of the ball. 3 interceptions last year, over 8 yards per attempt, 20.
Timeout. if you only throw 3 interceptions, that means you're not taking enough risks with the ball, in my opinion.
Especially if you're Graham Mertz.
Yes.
Shedeur Sanders threw 3 interceptions.
But he's
super
good.
Impressive. Yeah, we've seen Graham.
Well, I'm saying you want to say if you're only throwing 3 interceptions, you're not throwing the ball enough. Shedeur threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah, but
unless you're good.
Yeah, unless you're good.
Oh,
Unless you're good.
okay. I
Great
throw that
argument
little
there.
asterisk up there.
Yeah,
No,
Ben
but
Saban.
that makes sense to me though. Honestly, that like
What I want to get here with Florida, Graham Mertz, obviously, apparently you guys aren't a huge fan of that, but I think he takes care of the ball, doesn't turn the ball over.
That's true.
The secondary has legitimate upside, and lots of guys that are transferring in that are just untested. And again, that widens the range of possibilities. Are you going to be bad? Are you going to be good? I think that Florida, they're not going to, they're going to fight to go bowling, but they do have the opportunity to pull off one of these upsets. And if they can pull off one of those at the end of the year, that would be enough for me to say this team is underrated.
And I'll add to your point about Florida, where we're kind of already, putting Billy Napier in the grave, saying you're out of town. They're already packing his, they're hiring real estate agents. They're looking at other schools for the kids already. It seems like with Billy Napier in Florida, could he have a Neil Brown, West Virginia like resurgence where everybody's doubting Billy Napier, everybody's doubting this team? We weren't very high on Garrett Green at West Virginia last season. Maybe Graham Mertz can make that step. I see how you can talk yourself into that. But brother, have you looked at this Florida schedule? I mean,
we
don't even have to talk. We don't even have to talk about the Miami game. And just read me the last 5 games of the schedule.
Georgia, Texas, LSU,
Where are the games? Where are the games?
Georgia, Jacksonville, neutral site. Sidebar: how does Georgia get all these neutral sites with the good teams? They're not good teams, but like competitive games. Anyway,
Georgia.
Facts. Texas at Austin, LSU at the Swamp, Ole Miss at the Swamp, Florida State and Tallahassee. It's tough. That's tough. But we're looking at 4.5 games here. That's what I have for their win total. They just got to win 5, and they'll take one of those. They'll take one. That's KarterKast guarantee. They'll take one of those last few games.
KarterKast guarantee. That means what happens if that doesn't happen, right?
I have to host the show.
I don't think you want to. You have to edit the show.
No. You don't want to give me. We might get canceled. We might get canceled if you let me edit the show. Can I get a clip off here?
Go for it.
Can I go ahead and get a clip off? Florida Gators transferring in tight end Caleb Rios from Air Force, over 12 yards per attempt and a touchdown from scrimmage last season. If you transfer out of Air Force, are you a war criminal? Are you a traitor? Benedict Arnold type beat.
What if you're a Florida football fan that also loves this country?
I think it still comes down to leaving Air Force.
But
what if
Edward Snowden?
What if you left Air Force, you transferred out of Air Force, and then you started dating Livy Dunn?
Ooh. Oh. Baby Gronk?
What if
We're talking Baby Gronk here?
No, I'm talking Paul Skeens. That's an Air Force transfer.
So he could be a war criminal.
He could be.
But
It's interesting.
Let me say this. Let's say J.J. McCarthy started at Air Force and he transfers to Michigan and wins you the national title. Is he a war criminal at that point?
Torn meniscus, honorable discharge.
Got me.
Honorable discharge for JJ there.
Got me.
Yeah.
Not a war
But
criminal.
yeah, Florida underrated. I think they'll upset a team. They'll ruin somebody's season in one of those last 5 games or whatever we read off.
You know what? F it. I'm just gonna stick with Auburn to throw it on the graphic just to see if.
Yeah.
Do it. Just
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, we don't need to go any more into that. Connor's underrated team was Tennessee. You have to really believe in Tennessee to consider them underrated, in my opinion, because they're at 9 wins on a lot of sports books right now. So that means if you're calling them underrated, they're competing for the SEC title game in my mind.
They're one of the ones that I considered, and then I looked at the schedule and said, no thanks. They've got NC State. They've got at Oklahoma, home against Bama, at Georgia.
Yeah, but
That's brutal.
If Nico can be that guy, I mean, we saw what Hendon Hooker did. Nico should be better than Hendon Hooker, probably, as what the hype train is, what he's getting paid.
Already, though?
We'll see. I don't know. The weapons around Hendon Hooker were phenomenal, but
Yeah.
Heupel's a good coach, man. He's a really good coach.
Especially
He
from an
is.
offensive, he's a great
Yeah.
offensive mind. In
So
particular.
that's why I would never. I was looking through here. I was like, man, Tennessee. That's kind of a high win total. That's a hard schedule. Then when you really break down, you're like, man, Heupel's a really good coach. This quarterback could be. We don't know what he can be, but he looked great in the bowl game. He kind of had that Miller Moss in him, where you're like, man, he looked really comfortable in that Tennessee offense.
My mother would be remiss if I didn't spend a short time talking about Tennessee. So I will say, I am just going to refer to this Nico quarterback as Nico Heisman for the whole year, and Squirrel White for Biletnikoff. That will be my Tennessee comments.
All right, there you go. But yeah, I don't hate that. Like if Nico can take that next step and be that guy, and where the media darling, and all of a sudden people are in love with him and everything, a lot of eyeballs are going to be on him, and I can't wait for that NC State game in Charlotte. That's another. There's so many of these early season tone setter games. You can say what you want about conference realignment and these big time, we're losing games and stuff. We're also getting some awesome games, and we're getting some awesome non-conference games all of a sudden. So these tone setters early on in the season, making for some great college football. Let's do top 5 quarterbacks really quick. Number 5, Dylan.
Quinn Ewers.
Woo.
Got Quinn Ewers at number 5.
Gross.
Wasn't too impressed with the stats that I saw. So Ewers at number 5 for me.
Ew. Connor had Brady Cook at 5.
Nice. I like that.
I don't hate that. Ben, who do you have at 5?
I have Brady Cook.
I also have
Wow.
Brady Cook at 5.
Wow. Okay.
Yep, I have Brady Cook at 5. Number 4, Connor had Nico Heisman. He put Nico.
I have Nico Heisman
at 4.
at 4.
Ben, who do you have at 4?
I have Nico Heisman as well.
Whoa!
No way. This is electric right now.
I had Jalen Milroe at 4.
Okay.
I put Milroe at 4. I couldn't leave him out of my top 5. Number 3, I think we maybe not all aligned here. Number 3, I have Jackson Dart. I have Jackson Dart at 3
Holy
over.
cow. Okay.
And then Connor also has Jackson Dart at 3.
Okay. I have Jalen Milroe at 3.
Ben.
I've got Jackson Dart at 3.
Yeah, that's the right play there. And then number 2, Connor has Quinn Ewers.
I also have Quinn Ewers.
Wow. Ewers, Carter?
You have Ewers too, don't you, Carter?
I have Carson Beckett at 2.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, I put Carson Beckett
Shaking
2.
it up.
I put Carson Beckett 2, and I think everybody else has Beckett 1, right? And then except for me, I have Ewers at 1.
Yeah.
And I have did I already say I have Brady Cook at 2?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I have Brady Cook at 2, and then I have Carson
Cook at 2.
Yeah, I got Brady Cook at 2 and Carson Beck at 1, and I just realized I left off Jackson Dart.
Wait, read your list.
Bottom to top, 5-1, Quinn Ewers, Nico Heisman, Jalen Milroe, Brady Cook, Carson Beck.
So no Quinn Ewers. Wait, the Quinn Ewers at 5.
5.
And Dart
No
at
Dart.
6.
Yeah, no Dart. That's a little bit of an oversight on my end.
We'll let you make. You can make this change right now.
I like my list.
All right, there you go.
My team's on the court.
Team's
Yeah,
on
I was
the
gonna
court.
say my
you
team's
gotta
on
let
the
him play. You gotta let him play. Favorite bet: Connor has Alabama under 9.5 wins.
Oh,
Yeah,
Bama under 9.5.
you have Bama under 9.5 too. Wow, Ben.
I found Mizzou on BetMGM at 9.5, and I've got under.
Whoa, under.
Wow.
Mizzou's very good, but I have them under as in they're 9-3. I think they're better than Alabama.
But if
Ben, we had this discussion. I missed the days where you could get Missouri total wins 6. When it was like a nice little best kept secret type deal.
Yeah. It's just it's too last year. It was right. It was everyone was coming around to it early. Those who knew ball knew Missouri would be good. They were good. This year, everyone's come around. Everyone's on it. I now want off slightly.
I don't know. That schedule's a cakewalk. Schedule.
I will admit. Haven't looked at the schedule.
Let me read.
I will admit.
Let's go through it. Karter schedules today. This is a great podcast. Murray State, win. Buffalo, win. Boston College at home, close, win.
Win.
Vandy, win at home. At Texas A&M, potential loss.
I'll say loss there.
At UMass, win. Auburn at home, probably a win. At Alabama, probably a loss.
Loss.
Home Oklahoma. At South Carolina. At Mississippi State. Home Arkansas.
Okay, I'll stick with.
You can hop off. I think you're gonna.
Can you guys go? And then I'll rethink this.
I have 3 I love. So
Same.
Ben, I have 2 I love. Ben, you can piggyback off of one of these. I'll let you take whichever one. I'm going to go LSU under 9.5 wins. LSU under 9.5 wins or Ole Miss over 9.5 wins. I love both of those. Either one of those I'm more than happy to take and put on the graphic. I'm actually going to take both of those. Anyways.
So just so we have diversity on the graphic, because I had Bama under 9.5 and Connor has it. I also have Ole Miss over 9.5. So I could take that. Connor can have Bama under. Karter, you can have, what was it, LSU under?
LSU under. Tempted, I might even take Mizzou over on the graphic too.
That would be electric. Mizzou over, Mizzou under.
Are you taking Mizzou over?
I can take any 3 of those.
Okay.
5.
Shoot, it's just like
4.
you could just see. I'll take LSU under.
There we go. That's what we needed. All right, I'll take Mizzou over.
I didn't want to double dip. But I had to.
So we put some diversity on the. My graphics is gonna look so gross now that I think about it, because overrated LSU, underrated Auburn, favorite bet Missouri to win 10 games. What is happening? But
got that DEI graphic.
Yeah, no, yeah, we are all inclusive over here on our graphics. Anyhow, that's conference winners. That's right. Conference title game, conference winners. Connor has, let me double check here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Connor has Georgia beating Tennessee in the title game. That's why he believed Tennessee was underrated. He thinks Tennessee's making the title game in Atlanta, but he has the Georgia Bulldogs winning the SEC this year. Dylan.
Mr. Chalk Dylan here. I'm going Georgia beating Ole Miss in the SEC championship.
Yeah, you can't hate it, Ben.
It's too obvious, so I'm gonna say that Georgia beats Ole Miss in the regular season, kind of like I did with Ohio State, Oregon. I'm gonna say Ole Miss beats Georgia in the SEC title. I will admittedly say, like, I believe this very well could happen. Like, I think Ole Miss is that good. I think Georgia beats them in the regular season, but I also want to say that, like, I'm trying to be a little different, just a little. But I believe it. I believe it can happen.
I'm gonna go chalky. I'm gonna go super chalky. This is a Big Ten pick right here. Give me Georgia over Texas in the title game. I don't think there's any way Georgia doesn't win this SEC title after they lost it last year. I think there's gonna be a big chip on their shoulder. Big chip on their shoulder. Even just for that SEC title game. I know the playoff is what truly matters, but the SEC title game is gonna mean a lot to them. Obviously, it's gonna mean a lot to both teams, but getting that bye, and I think that taste in their mouths from last year is going to affect them a lot. I got Georgia winning the SEC title this year. Let's talk about some of the rest of these teams we didn't touch on. Arkansas, they're going to stink.
They're going to be bad.
Taylon Green from Boise State doesn't really do it for me. Sam Pittman's probably gone. I mean, they might have even downgraded on those positions, and they were bad last year too. Dylan already touched on Florida. We touched on Georgia. Kentucky, we talked about this before we started. Kentucky is the most meh team in this conference. They scream Jeff Fisher, Tennessee Titans 6-6. Scream 6-6.
Glad to see I'm the only one in that boat.
We touched on LSU. Mississippi State. Mississippi State's getting a lot of hate right now. They're like, everyone's like, oh, they're going to be the worst team in the conference. I think they're going to struggle, and they're going to have growing pains this year. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but their non-conference is a 4-0 non-conference. I mean, Arizona State's their hardest non-conference game, and Arizona State's going to be probably, if not the worst team in the Big 12. So
second, maybe, yeah.
Second worst in the Big 12, yeah. So there's a real world where Mississippi State wins 5 games. I think 6 games might be a little tough for them, but over 4.5, like I wouldn't be crazy. But anyhow, we touched on Mizzou a little bit. Oklahoma, Ben, you talked about them. South Carolina, they're in that Kentucky, a little south of Kentucky category where Lenore Sellers, I'm curious to see how he is. I think South Carolina is a great contender. They're going to piss you off. They're going to really piss you off because you're going to say, oh, like for Dylan, I know you don't do these, and I've stopped doing these since I've gotten burned on them, but you do these like minus 600 favorite money line parlays, these 3-way ones. And you have like Alabama over against South Carolina, and you have Alabama minus 550, but all of a sudden it's 17-17 in the fourth quarter in Columbia. I feel like that's just where South Carolina lies. They're going to ruin someone's season a little bit this season, but like they're barely a bowl team in my mind.
Lenore Sellers, former Virginia commit.
And so he might be good. He might be like RJ Harvey, you know?
Yeah, former Virginia quarterback. I think RJ Harvey was a quarterback in Virginia and got kicked off the team. Anyway,
we talked a little about Tennessee. We talked a little about Texas. A&M, we didn't touch on at all.
I like them.
They were a sneaky underrated pick. I would have loved A&M at 7.5 wins. I don't like them at 8.5 wins. That feels a little too high for me. But Mike Elko's a really good coach. I mean, if you can win those kind of games at Duke, you can turn around a program like Duke that's just a dead in the water program. You're going to be a good coach. I think he's going to do really well at A&M. I really think they're going to be good. But,
I think so too.
And also, this is a great year to buy in on A&M because every single year it's like, ooh, A&M, they're my sneaky, sexy pick to win the SEC. No one in their mother is even thinking about Texas A&M. We're an hour 15 into this recording right now, and we're just now getting to Texas A&M. So that's where they are in our minds right now. But they could be a 9-3 team. That's not crazy. And also, like I said, that first game against Notre Dame, that's going to tell us a lot about Riley Leonard, Notre Dame. What are they going to look like this season? Because that's one of Notre Dame's only tough games. They have a really easy schedule this season. Can Wegman be the guys? You know, there's a lot of great storylines going into that one. I can't wait for our week 1 preview for that one. And then Vandy, I don't want to talk about them. I did see, Dylan, did you see they have a 2.5 win total?
I was seeing 3.
So 2.5 is minus 200 at FanDuel right now. Now I know you're like, that's very juicy. Let me read you 3 games on their schedule. We don't need to talk about the others. Alcorn State, Georgia State, Ball State.
They'll lose to Georgia State.
Yeah, it is on the road.
If you want to be completely honest, they'll lose to Georgia. But, you know, they did get Pavia coming in from New Mexico State. He was not an awful quarterback. Diego Pavia?
Yeah,
come on, I can't be the only one.
We're not gonna do this charade again with Vandy.
That was tough. I had to run 2 miles for like a week because of that stupid team. Forced me to do exercise.
Anything else before I do a 2-minute predictions?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's do it. All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. Big Ten, or not Big Ten. I wrote down Big Ten. What is wrong with me? SEC predictions in under 2 minutes. Let's go. Alabama. I think Alabama has a great year. I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be a good coach, but I think there's going to be some growing pains in the non-Nick Saban era. Jalen Milroe is amazing. I think Alabama goes 9-3, and then Arkansas, not sold on Taylor Green, Boise State transfer. Sam Pittman's not going to make it by the end of the year. They're going to have a tough schedule. Going 4-8 for Arkansas. Auburn, sneaky. I don't hate Auburn this year. They have some winnable games on their schedule, a lot of favorable home games. Auburn, 7-5, 8-4 feels very right for Auburn. Florida, very opposite of Auburn's schedule. They have a very tough schedule. I'm worried about the Florida Gators. Billy Napier coaching for his job. Go 5-7 for Florida, barely sneaking over that win total. Georgia, they have a very hard schedule, much harder than last season, but they're still going to go 10-2 and make the SEC title game and win the SEC title. It's just because they have a very, very hard schedule, but they're still going to be great and the best team in this country, even though they're 10-2. Kentucky, they're the most meh team in this conference, 6-6. LSU, I'm worried that you lose a Heisman quarterback, you lose 2 first-round NFL wide receivers. I can't trust you. 8-4 for LSU. Mississippi State, very easy non-conference. They're getting crapped on like crazy, like I mentioned, but I think they sneaky go 5-7. I don't think that's insane for how bad their non-conference is. Missouri, we read through their schedule. They got a very, very, very favorable schedule in the SEC, especially. I think they quietly go 10-2 again. I think they have another 10-win season again quietly. Oklahoma, Venables doesn't win me over. I don't get Oklahoma. I think they struggled making that jump to the SEC. I got 7-5. Ole Miss, they have a great schedule. Jackson Dart's amazing. I love Ole Miss. Give me all the Ole Miss stock you can buy. I got them going 10-2. South Carolina, Lenore Sellers might be fun, but barely a bowl team. Let's go 5-7 for the Cox. Tennessee, Nico Heisman. It's boomer bust with him. Josh Heupel's a great coach. The NC State game is going to be a phenomenal game. Tone setter for the season. I've got Tennessee going 9-3. Texas, look, the running back injuries scare me, but Quinn Ewers, phenomenal quarterback. As long as he can stay healthy and all these other guys can stay healthy, I got Texas going 10-2. No problem. They're going to lose to Georgia in the SEC title game. A&M, Elko's a great coach. He's going to do phenomenal things at A&M. They're flying under the radar. I think they sneaky have a 9-3 season. I think he's a great coach. And then Vandy 3-9 because it's Vandy. There we go. We got through that.
I always feel like I need to express ship you a water after those.
Yeah.
You know?
Don't worry, Kirk. We just need to get a Costco sponsorship, you know?
There we go. We're Costco guys.
Boom! Sorry for the mics. Sorry for your eardrums. We might start. That's what we should have just done for all these previews is we just name a team and we go boom or doom.
Oh, world's shortest podcast.
Now? Should we try that right now? Just a quick.
Yeah.
Dylan.
Okay.
I'm going to go
guys.
through the SEC. We're going to do an SEC boom or doom for you. All right.
All right.
People turn down the volume because Dylan's going to boom or doom. All right, here we go. Bama.
Doom.
Arkansas.
Doom.
Auburn.
Doom.
You're the opposite of the Costco guys. You're dooming left and right. Florida.
I have integrity. Who is it?
Florida.
Boom.
Georgia.
Boom. Abby's going to be like, what are you doing? Okay.
Kentucky.
Boom.
Kentucky shouldn't get anything.
Yeah,
Just
I
like
think
nothing.
Hey, Chip, train him.
LSU.
Boom.
Mississippi State.
Boom. No, dude. Doom.
Oh,
Chad, change it. Had to change it.
Threw a curveball at us.
Doom. I got too excited.
Missouri.
Doom.
Whoa. Oklahoma.
We're late on the train. It's too late. Doom.
Ole Miss.
Boom.
South
I hate
Carolina.
this. This is too many teams. We should have done this before conference realignment.
Should we do it for the independent teams, Army and UMass?
Yeah, Notre Dame. Doom for South Carolina.
Doom for South Carolina. Tennessee.
Boom, 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 boom.
Texas.
Boom.
A&M.
Boom.
Vandy.
Boom.
That was a great.
I'm sweating right now.
That was the best podcast segment we've ever done.
That was awesome. Yeah. Watch the video. Watch YouTube.
Oh my gosh, I can't. So like, I'll be editing these clips and we'll put out the the SEC predictions. I'm sitting here like I got Lenore Sellers blah blah blah, and I do that, and then meanwhile the one with Dylan, boom, and we get like 100,000 views.
Engagement test. Post them at the same time.
Mine's gonna get my clip's gonna get my prediction's gonna get like 300 views, and that one's gonna get 100K minimum. Oh my gosh!
It's a double chunk chocolate cookie.
That was such a good way to close
that was
out
good.
previews.
Great idea for a bit.
All right, starting next week, we're back. We have NFL previews coming. We're going to do divisions. Cannot wait for that. That's going to be some fun podcasts. That's when right now we're cooking the appetizers. We're putting out the mozzarella sticks, the garlic bread, the rolls. You name it, the chips and queso. But then the entrees
Caesar
with
salad.
the NFL. The entrees. I guess Vandy's the Caesar salad. Then we're going to come out with the steak, with the lobster,
the wings,
the wings. Wings could be a little bit of both.
Appetizer.
Maybe
yeah.
like 10 to 15 wings.
Okay,
for
yeah,
just you.
Just for yourself. Yeah. But I love it. I can't wait. NFL previews coming next week. So make sure to subscribe to the pod, rate, review, do what you can do to help out. YouTube, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe on the YouTube. YouTube numbers doing very well right now, so appreciate that. Dylan, thank you. Ben, thank you. Connor, thank you, even though you're not here. Follow us all on Twitter. It's all in the episode description as well. At KarterKast on everything. Download the SeatGeek app. Use code KarterKast. $20 off your first purchase. Download the SeatGeek app or go to SeatGeek.com. Use code KarterKast. $50 minimum purchase required. We'll be back next week, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.